Good morning and welcome to the fall commencement exercises of Baylor University School of Law. To begin our exercises this morning, I'll call upon William Mcmichael, a member of the graduating class, to deliver the invocation. William.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father God, thank you for the blessing of Baylor Law School. Thank you for these classmates of mine, and thank you for the family, friends, and faculty who have guided us on our journey here today. Father, as we leave this place, make us instruments of your mercy. Give us eyes to see situations as you would see them, Father, and to serve others, so that through our actions, others might come to know you in Christ whom you have sent. We love you. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Good morning. Please be seated. Again, welcome to the fall commencement ceremonies of Baylor Law School. We are so pleased you're here with us today. This is a day of memory. You have all the family, loved ones, and guests. You have followed the progress of our degree candidates today for many, many years, 20 or in some cases more years, and that makes today an auspicious day in which they commence. In other words, they begin the next stage of their life journey in life and in career. Class, I'm speaking to you now. This is your day. You have earned it. You shed blood and tears, whined and moaned, sometimes thought you couldn't do it, but you have done it. This is a time to celebrate you, but you didn't come here alone at all. Not at all. You have been supported through your entire lifetime by parents, many of you for many years, by spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, children, grandparents for your lifetime, aunts, uncles. You have a whole panoply of family, friends, and loved ones who have been with you at each juncture through your academic career, but who have also been with you through the ups and downs that life inevitably brings to each of us. And it's appropriate as we begin our ceremony today, class, that you stand, turn around, and thank those who have brought you to this point. Baylor Law School is no easy road to hoe. It is one that is difficult. It is trying. It is one that is not for everyone. I shared with the class a few minutes ago in the roving area that 2 days ago, Baylor Law School once again was ranked #1 by a review called the Princeton Review as having the most competitive law students in the nation among 204 accredited law schools. Now that's something that we have never really known how to deal with. On one hand, when you think of most competitive, you of course come to mind the thought of books being hid, of students vying against one another and the like in all manner of activities. That's not what most competitive means at Baylor Law School. In the room a few minutes ago, you could look around the room, you could see the friendships, the lifetime friendships, you could see the camaraderie that has developed among the members of the graduating class. They will go forth today with friends that will last a lifetime. We tell them at orientation that because the program is so trying, that the best friendships, the most lasting friendships they have will indeed emerge from their 3 years at Baylor Law School. Now, that most competitive thing, now that I have explained it and put it in the context of healthiness, in other words, helping one another, I will share with you that we do not share that with anyone who is considering coming to Baylor Law School. We keep it well hidden because the law school is known widely as a place that is something of a grinder. You have no doubt seen the t-shirts that simply say Baylor Law School, where fun goes to die. They have done it. At the law school, we have a strong service theme. We have a message to send to our students, even before they come to the law school, that if you do not have a heart for service, if you don't feel a passion, a desire to help others, you don't belong in the profession. And you certainly should not be a Baylor lawyer. And by the way, my colleagues and all in the Baylor law arena know that I always spell Baylor lawyer with a capital B and a capital L, because it is not merely a descriptor, it is indeed a brand. Service to clients, service that goes well beyond, though, that to clients. It goes to the community, it goes to the family, it goes to the profession. We send these students forward with a message that we believe will be engraved upon their heart and mind, that they have a set of tools, they have a set of skills, they have an education, they have a direction, they have a mandate to go forward and to be a blessing, even as they indeed have been blessed by you and by the experiences and education which they have. The law school has an extensive pro bono and public service program, and that is simply one vehicle that we use to impress upon our students the importance of understanding that lawyering is helping people, humans, people with their problems that they encounter. Our pro bono and public service program 2 years ago in 2015 won the ABA's highest honor for pro bono programming. It's an award that has been given by the ABA for 31 years, and Baylor Law School was only the third school in a 31-year span to receive that honor. We have about 6 other honors that we have received in about the same number of years for our pro bono and public service programming. And I want to bring that to your attention today because you now are going to have a law license. You're going to be a Baylor lawyer class. You're going to be capital B, capital L, Baylor lawyer. And we know that you're going to make us proud. We're going to enjoy at the law school the reflected glory that will come from your endeavors. Also, as part of our pro bono program, we have a veterans clinic. It is one of our clinics. Baylor Law School salutes the armed services. I always, when speaking to a larger group, make this point. We, as lawyers, are stewards of the justice system. We are stewards of our rule of law. The rule of law would not be possible in our nation but for the security that is provided to us each day and night in our homes, in our state, in our nation, and indeed around the globe by the members of the armed services. Our callings in life, lawyers, armed service members, they are synergistic, and that is seldom recognized. But with that in mind, I want to ask everyone here gathered who is an active member, reserve, retired, if you have served, please stand and receive our appreciation. You are deeply appreciated by a grateful nation. On the stage today, I have my colleagues with me to assist in this wonderful passage that the students have today before them. I will introduce Professor Jim Wren, who wisely has been chosen by the class as the commencement speaker last. I first will speak to my other 3 colleagues. And I'm going to be brief here because there are biographies that are provided in the program. Professor Jerry Powell. Have you ever heard that name before, families? Yeah, he's the guy. Professor Powell is the director of our practice court program. It is a program by which, frankly, Baylor Law School is proudly known. The practice court program puts the students through 6 months of difficulty and stress and expectations that sometimes even may be beyond the reasonable, but it's designed, whether they ever step before a jury, even if they are never in a courtroom, it's designed to make them into advocates, and we are each advocates in all we do. Makes no difference what you have in your head and your heart. If you cannot persuade others to at least see or consider your viewpoint, it is for naught. Professor Powell, as you can see from the biography information, has been on the faculty now for 31 years. He is storied on the faculty. It's interesting when Baylor lawyers meet one another. Over the past century, we've had only 6 or 7 directors of the practice court program. They very seldom identify themselves by class year. You may not find yourself saying class of 2017. We don't refer to one another as class of 81 or class of 63 or the like. Baylor lawyers, when they meet one another, within a few sentences usually say, I'm a Powell product, or I'm a Muldrow product, or I'm an Underwood or a Wilson product. That's just the way that it is. Professor Powell, accomplished trial lawyer, he has shepherded these students for these 31 years through the travails of practice court. One point I want to pull out, he is a master teacher. At Baylor University, many years ago, the title of master teacher was developed, and it has been conferred, I think, about 20 times in the last 20 or 25 years. And that's with a faculty now that is well over 900. So I think you can understand and appreciate the honor and the exclusivity that is involved in being named as a master teacher of the university. Jerry, Professor Powell, thank you for all you do. Next to Professor Powell, Professor Liz Fraley. Professor Fraley also teaches in the practice court program. She has come to us a few years ago. This is her 3rd year, and she came from a very successful, high-profile defense practice, medical malpractice defense in Dallas. As you can see, she has been named as a super lawyer since the mind of man runneth not to the contrary, going way, way back. Every year, the super lawyer designation is conferred on a select group. And I think that is the best mark that should be observed about Liz Fraley. She is truly a super lawyer that the students have the pleasure of learning from. Then, Associate Dean Leah Teague. Leah and I, we've been together in the Dean's Suite now for 26 years. Everyone knows who has heard me speak that I regard her as a sister. We are like that. We love Baylor Law School. Dean Teague is involved in so many aspects of not only the law school, but the community as well. She is a member and a firecracker, if you will, in so many higher education and leadership programs across the nation. And she also is the person who is the touch point for our students when they need academic guidance, personal guidance, when they just need to handle things that might not be going as they would wish. They come to Dean Teague. And Leah, I love you, and thank you for all you do for Baylor Law School. The faculty and staff of Baylor Law School make it go. I have introduced the colleagues here on the stage, but I have many faculty and staff colleagues here. Most of them are to my right, your left, or in the back part of the sanctuary. I want to draw your attention to them because they make Baylor Law School. Baylor Law School, we're in a beautiful building. We're on the Brazos. Folks sometimes talk about the building. I always remind them Baylor Law School is not the building. Baylor Law School is what happens in the classrooms, the courtrooms, the faculty offices, day by day, week by week, and month by month, as our faculty and our staff mentor, guide, and lead our students through the program. And with that, I want to call upon all my faculty and staff colleagues on the stage and in the audience to please rise to receive our appreciation. And also, the godfather, David Gwynn. David Gwynn, Professor David Gwynn, also a master teacher. Professor Gwynn, is known as the godfather. He has now completed and is moving into his 52nd year as a member of the Baylor Law School faculty. He is a treasure to us. David, godfather, please rise. Grades don't come easy at Baylor Law School. You probably all know that from what has been related by our students, our graduates today. The highest ranking student in our class is Erika Griffith. And we have a tradition of the highest ranking student in the graduating class sharing a few remarks with all gathered about her experience and the experience of the class. Erika.
Thank you, Dean Tobin. Good afternoon, and welcome to our friends and family that have joined us to be a part of our special day. Thank you to our faculty and staff that have came today, and most of all have helped us get to this moment. And to my fellow graduates, if any of you are like me, you probably felt like this day would never come. And so to quote one of the greatest philosophers ever, Dr. Seuss, I say to you, congratulations. Today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know, and you are the one who'll decide where to go. I am honored to be addressing our graduating class. While we may not have all started together, we all had the pleasure, and I use that term loosely, of enjoying the practice court experience with each other. But we didn't do it alone. We had friends and family that supported us along the way. And so we thank you for being here and supporting us. And while I would love to thank each and every person that supported me, I don't have the time. So I'll take a time to thank a few people. First and foremost, I would love to thank my parents, because without you, I wouldn't be here today. I would also like to thank my siblings, especially my brothers who weren't able to make it. But thank you for all of the phone calls, listening to me vent, complain, and even cry. Thank you for your words of encouragement. To my law school friends, I've made numerous friends while I'm here, but Jamie and Taisha, you guys are special. Jamie, thank you for all of our lunch dates, our bananagram sessions, and just all of the good times. Taisha, thank you for forcing me to be your friend, stalking me on Facebook, and just enjoying our lives together. As I prepared for today, I began to reflect on the journey that got me to this place. As some of you may know, I come from a small city in Southwest Florida. I was raised in a single-parent home, where for as long as I know, my mother worked multiple jobs to provide for my brothers and I. And eventually I went on to become the first in my family to graduate from college. But my college journey wasn't the normal one. I went to 3 different universities, and not because I obtained multiple degrees, but because I was a bit indecisive. I changed my major 7 different times, and I even took time off from school. Statistically, I shouldn't be here today, and I've even had people tell me that I wouldn't get to this point. And there were times that I even myself doubted that I would make it here. But here I am, just moments away from graduating from the Baylor Law School. While we all have different stories and different backgrounds, we have all faced adversity that made getting to this moment just a little bit more difficult than what we would have liked. And yet here you all are, about to graduate. Many of you have already received successful bar results. And so today, we celebrate our success, as we should have. But there will undoubtedly be times in the future where we will be faced with obstacles that we once again have to overcome. And it's in those moments that we will forget the feeling of achievement that we have here today. But I urge you to remember that we are Baylor lawyers, and that is not a title that came easily. Think of all the sacrifices you made, the television shows you gave up for the past 2 to 3 years, the birthdays and the family events that you missed. Think of all the time you put in. Each of us have proven that we have the tenacity and discipline to push forward. Those times where you ran on little to no sleep, fueled by caffeine and sheer determination alone. The times in practice court where we felt like we were at our breaking points and we couldn't take on anything else, and then we received a 100-page assignment, or we received another motion to write, or even a memo. And yet somehow we still managed it. It was those struggles that are preparing us to push forward and go the distance, even when we're under great pressure. Because as I said, we're Baylor lawyers. As our predecessors and our successors, we are all bound by our shared experience here at Baylor Law. We're now part of the Baylor Law family, and it's time for us to put everything that we've learned here into action. It is time that we embody what it truly means to be a Baylor lawyer. I look forward to seeing all of the great accomplishments that you will all undoubtedly achieve. And so, in the words of Professor Wren, I'll be in touch.
Thank you, Erika. You capture the experience so precisely. Professor Jim Wren is our speaker today, selected by the class, as were Professor Powell and Professor Fraley, selected to do the hooding of the graduates. Professor Wren has been at the school for many years. He joined the faculty in 2006, but for many years prior to that time when we were so fortunate to have him join us full-time, he was an adjunct professor at the law school, teaching complex litigation management and other courses related to the trial practice. Professor Wren graduated from Baylor University, and he also earned, before he earned his Juris Doctorate from Baylor, he earned a Master of Arts in International Studies from the University of Kent in the UK. He established an auspicious practice, and his reach went well beyond Central Texas in his many active trial lawyer engagements across the nation. He is still, on a time-to-time basis, very regularly engaged in the trial practice. At the law school, he is part of our practice court team that we have already mentioned. I don't know how to quite articulate this, but Professor Wren has a way of making the students perform because they don't want to disappoint him. Is that fair, class? It's not so much the whip behind, but it's the carrot ahead. And when that can be done in an environment in which rigor and expectations go way beyond sometimes perhaps what is even reasonable, that is a real tribute to what teaching is all about. Professor Wren has been named as an outstanding professor of the university, another honor that is bestowed upon very few. He's been a super lawyer, named as a super lawyer since 2002, every year. He has authored 2 books. He has a number of certifications in trial advocacy, trial law, and personal injury law. He has served as the president of a national specialization certification board. He has simply a raft of professional and personal accomplishments that really defy quick explanation or definition. Jim Wren is absolutely tireless. Each of my faculty colleagues go and go and go. I think we would all agree, though, that we can't figure out how Jim manages to get by what seems to be 3 hours of sleep a night. He is notably creative in his approach, not only to practice court, but in regard to all of his work with the students. And class, you have chosen so wisely. And with that, Professor Wren, Jim, your remarks.
I have seen knights in armor panic at the first sign of battle. I've seen a lowly squire, unarmed, pull a spear from his own body to defend a dying horse. Nobility is not a birthright. It is earned by one's actions. That comes from a movie, 1991 movie, 25 years ago. Probably, I don't know if any of you have even seen it, Prince of Thieves, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Maybe you saw it while you were growing up. Kevin Costner uttered those words. That was a movie, the director of which was Kevin Reynolds, a Baylor Law grad. And you may have heard, class, on occasion, us talking about the art of the story and finding the moral high ground. Have you heard that? Is that possibly a familiar thought? And it got me to looking at the number of movies that have been directed by Baylor Law grads. Just as a short list, not a complete list, The Blind Side, The Founder, just came out this year, Saving Mr. Banks, Snow White and the Huntsman, The Alamo, The Rookie, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, Risen, The Count of Monte Cristo, Red Dawn, and the list goes on. You get the point. These are all directed by or screenwritten by Baylor Law graduates, primarily Kevin Reynolds and others. The point here, though, is not to talk about movies. It is to talk about what possibly has driven the desire and the ability of those and of you, graduates, to find the story and to find the moral high ground. I've seen knights in battle panic. I've seen lowly squires. Nobility is not a birthright, it's defined by one's actions. What it's really saying is we earn it. Day by day, action by action, we earn it. Class, I want to take you back to touch again on a theme that we started with, very first day, PC orientation. A prophetic quote from Ezekiel 22. The people of the land have practiced extortion and committed robbery. They have oppressed the poor and needy and have extorted from the alien without justice. And I looked for one among them who would build up the wall and stand in the breach before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. What a lament. That's God speaking through the prophet Ezekiel, saying, where are those who will stand for these folks? Who will be the advocate? Who will be the warrior? Who will be the leader, the counselor, the rescuer? And it boils down to action. Action. What is the right thing? And what are you willing to do about it? I'm recounting these things because these are things that I struggle with. I struggle with them on a day-to-day basis. I remind myself of these things on a day-to-day basis. This is not anything that I speak to you as one who has gone beyond it. It is something that I deal with. So I want to take you back almost 3,000 years to the land of Judah, present-day Israel. And at that point in time, the land of Judah, the Israelites, were struggling. There was a king, King Saul, who I think it would be fair to say that in totality he did not stand before God. He did not stand for the land. He did not stand in the breach. But he was determined to hang on to his kingship. In fact, he would, if it required murder, to eliminate any possible threat to his throne, to his kingship, he would do it. And in that setting, in that struggling time, God looked for one who would stand for the land, who would stand for the people, who would be a warrior for the people. And he directed the prophet Samuel to a young man, David, who was merely a sheep herder, a teenager at that point in time. Not yet a warrior, but he had the heart of a warrior, and God saw it. And God directed Samuel to him, first to his family and then to him. And Samuel went. Samuel ended up, at God's direction, anointing him as the future king of Israel. But he had to do it in secret because that would not be looked upon favorably by Saul. I suspect most of you know the next chapter of that story. David, still as a very young man, still a teenager, was thrust into, or actually stepped into voluntarily, the very unlikely position of taking on the Philistine Confederacy's champion, Goliath. And you know that story. David goes out, faces off we've got the armies of the Philistines and the armies of Israel looking on, and there is this momentous showdown, and David tells Goliath exactly what he's about to do. And Goliath laughs at him, and David says, I come to you in the name and in the power of the gods, the God one of Israel. And you know the outcome of that story. Goliath was dead. David prevailed. And Saul at that point in time, the king Saul at that point in time, was happy because David had stepped up to take the pressure off of Saul. Saul was otherwise possibly going to have to face off against Goliath, and Saul did not want to do that. In fact, he'd already been delaying for a long time. He did not want to take on that battle. David was willing to, and Saul was very happy. But it didn't last. Why? Because David continued to take on other battles for the people, for the land. And he became incredibly popular. He was starting to become recognized by the people. Saul has slain his thousands, David his tens of thousands. And Saul recognized in David a threat, at least in Saul's mind, to taking over the throne. And so Saul set out, plotted the murder of David. And David got wind of it and fled into the backcountry. He ended up in the wilderness at one point in time, the wilderness of Paran. And that's where I really want to pick up the story. A story that is not one of the often told stories of David. You may have heard other stories. You may not have heard this particular story of David. David is in the back country, and he's not alone. He has had a number of men that have gathered around him. And I want to read you the description of these men that have gathered around David. And everyone that was in distress, and everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discontented, gathered themselves unto David. And he became a captain over them, and there were with him about 400 men. Now I want you to get the picture. The picture is, can you imagine 400 angry, young, armed, homeless guys? That's what we got right here. And David is their commander. These are a bunch of outlaws. But David is believing that he is on a mission from God, that he's got multiple opportunities to kill Saul, two in fact, passes up on both of them because he believes that that is not part of the rule of law that God has laid down, that it's not his time yet. And so he is holding on to this sense of leadership of these 400 armed, dangerous, homeless guys. And as part of that, in the wilderness of Paran, he instructs his men to essentially set up a protective wall around all of the sheep herders in that wilderness region. And you said, you protect them because it's the right thing to do. And there were marauders in that area. There were those who would take the sheep, who would kill the sheep herders, but not as long as David and his men were providing the protective wall. And this continued for a number of months. David asking for nothing for himself or for his men just because that was the right thing to do. Until sheep shearing season came about, and that was a celebratory time. And in that celebratory time, the tradition was, of course, to celebrate the good fortune of getting to that point in the year and to have massive amounts of food, bread, meat, wine. And so David sends 10 of his men to the richest of the sheep herders in that region, one who had a flock of about 3,000 flocks, multiple, of totaling about 3,000 sheep. He sent his men to Nabal, this rich sheep herder, owner, and has them to make a request, a simple request of Nabal. Simply saying to Nabal, in essence, we have provided a wall of protection for you, for your sheep herders, for your sheep. For these many months, we have asked for nothing. Nothing has gone missing. In essence, the implication, we may be homeless, but we are still seeking to protect you. And then they said, ask your sheep herders. They'll tell you this. And here's what the request is. Would you allow us to come celebrate with you, to share today in this time of celebration? And here was Nabal's response. Who is David? There are lots of servants nowadays who run away from their master. And you want me to take my bread and my wine and my meat that I have killed from my shearers and give it to a bunch of runaway servants who I've never heard of? Why am I telling you this? I want you to put yourself in the position of David when that message comes back from his men. He is not happy. What would you do if your men come back to you and tell you after all of this that you have been insulted and disrespected? Let me tell you what David did. David's response was very simple. He turned to all his men and he said, gird on your swords. And then he went in to add just a bit more. He said, and I'm reading this, I have protected all that this fool has in the wilderness, so that nothing belonging to him ever went missing. And it has all been in vain, because he has repaid me evil for good. I swear, by morning time there will not be one left belonging to him who, and this is a direct quote out of the King James Version of the Bible, Holy Writ. He says, there will not be left to him one who pisseth against the wall. Now, subsequent translations of that have cleaned that up a bit, made that a little bit more politically correct. Subsequent translations just say, I'll kill all of Nabal's men. But if you know anything about David, he was not politically correct. He had a tendency to say what he meant and to mean what he said. And he knew he was the wall, and he did not like being pisseth against. So is there a difference between right and power? He sets out with his men, 400 of them, and they are on their way to crash a party, literally. Meanwhile, back at the festivities, Nabal's wife, young wife, and then you got to understand, in that day and time, young wives, particularly those married to rich old men, were not expected to speak out, were not expected to assert their will. But Nabal's men, who had heard this conversation between David's men and Nabal, went and told Abigail, the young wife of Nabal, what had happened. And she immediately sprang into action. She ordered the men, without consulting her husband, she ordered the men to load up mules, a whole pack of mules, to load them up with massive amounts of food, bread, meat, wine, and to head out. And she mounted up a mule for herself, and she went out right after them. Met David and his 400 on the road, and she immediately dismounted, put herself face down on the ground, and these are her words. On me, my Lord, on me let this iniquity be. And please let your maidservant speak, and hear the words of your maidservant. Please do not regard this scoundrel Nabal, her husband, for he is a fool. I did not see the young men you sent, The Lord has held you back from this bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hand. Now this present which your maidservant has brought, let it be given to your young men, and the Lord will certainly make for you an enduring house, because you fight the battles of the Lord. Do not allow this revenge to be on your conscience. God calls us to lead, to counsel, to rescue, to step into the breach. And I ask you that day, who was it that was taking the action to rescue, to step into the breach? Was it David with his power? Or was it Abigail seizing the moment to do the right thing? Never underestimate your ability to make a difference right now, from the very beginning. It calls for doing the right thing, even when the right thing is hard. Nobility is not a birthright. It's earned by our actions, every day, one at a time. And sometimes courage takes on the cloak of humility. It's not always being totally out front. And so I ask you, are you willing to step out? Are you willing to, at times, do that which is hard, sometimes even that which is humbling, in order to do the right thing, to lead, to counsel, to rescue? I believe I know the answer for you, because I've seen you in action. So let me move to a little bit different setting, coming forward almost 3,000 years. Approximately 100 years ago, Baylor Practice Court originated 95 years ago. It was founded in 1922 by a Judge James P. Alexander. He was a district judge at that point in time here in Waco, here in McLennan County. But I want to back you up just before that, to the years surrounding World War I. In the years surrounding World War I, there was a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan in America. As the KKK started taking political hold, it swept through McLennan County, here in Waco. In 1916, just a few blocks from here, about 4 blocks from here, a young black man, Jesse Washington, was lynched. By 1921, shortly after World War I, by 1921, there were only 2 elected officials left in McLennan County that had not joined the KKK. Astounding, isn't it? But true. One of those was a sheriff, Sheriff Bob Buchanan. The other was a judge, Judge James P. Alexander. And those 2 stood alone. In October 1921, Sheriff Buchanan and 2 of his deputies faced off against a mob of white-clad, hooded KKKers. And a riot broke out. Sheriff Buchanan was shot twice. He continued knife fighting after his gun was stripped from him. By 1922, there was only one left, Judge James P. Alexander. And in 1922, Judge Alexander founded Baylor Practice Court. And he had a clear message. By the way, all of this I'm recounting for you comes from a book, Crossroads, by Leon Jaworski. You may have heard of Leon Jaworski. Jaworski was one of James P. Alexander's students, and he talks about the impact that it made on him, seeing what Judge Alexander stood for and what he wanted to convey through the hard rigors of Baylor Practice Court. That there are times when doing the right thing is not easy, when it is downright hard, And it is not just hard from the things that you certainly know about, the long nights, the intense pressure, but there are times, and I've talked to you about this, when we are preparing you for not the day-to-day things, but for the crisis moments in your life, when you may have to stand alone because it is right, because it is the right thing to do. And you may not be lauded for it. You may be running against public opinion, as Judge Alexander was. But he wanted these folks to understand that you do it anyway, and you can. Because God calls you, God equips you, you have the power within you, the God-given power within you to continue on, to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and to persevere because you are called, because it is right. Leon Jaworski, the Watergate prosecutor, talks about that, talks about what he learned in Baylor Practice Court and at the instruction, the guidance, the mentorship of Judge Alexander. And he says it stood him well. And for him, what were lonely, hard, dark days, as he was squaring off against the President of the United States, that he could continue to do it because it was the right thing. Be encouraged. You know you have it within you because you've earned it. And now, in my last point, my last remarks, this is to you, the family members, the friends, the ones that are so rightfully proud of these folks right here. But I want to tell you something that I know and I want you to know. And it's this. The dean spoke, I think, lightly of, we don't necessarily say this is the most competitive student body, but I want you to know something. They do know. They know it before they ever get to practice court. The admissions folks at Baylor may cringe when I get to talk to prospective students because I always make no bones about it. I tell folks, some of you may have heard this from me, if you come here, we're going to work your tails off. It's going to be really, really hard. And what these folks know, family members, is in their first year and 2 years of Baylor Law School, they're hearing it. They're hearing the stories of those who are in front of them. They are hearing how difficult it is. And they choose to do it anyway. These are the folks who have said, yeah, I know it's hard, and I'll choose to do it anyway. And they have persevered. They have continued to put one foot in front of the other. This is the student body that we want as our graduates from Baylor Law School. The ones who say, I will not be deterred, I will not be put off, I will continue on, and I know it. What I want you, family members, to know is that this day is a special, special day because these folks, there's not a cockiness here. I think these graduates all know that there's still much for them to learn going forward. But there is a hard-earned confidence, a confidence that even when there are defeats, even when they are standing alone, even when they wonder what will tomorrow bring, they also know that they are called by God for a mission and that they have it within them to persevere. When they're coming up here across the stage, they're not getting any sort of gift from us. They know that they have earned it. They already own it here. And so I want you, family members, friends, please join me in acknowledging this class. These folks, these are the heroes of today, and these are the heroes in the days to come, because I know, and we know, you know what is in them. So please join me. These are our heroes.
Thank you, Professor Wren. Professor Wren's words about leading are particularly apt. We are, as I mentioned earlier, the guardians of the rule of law and our system of justice, often under attack in these days. You, class, you can be Davidic leaders. You can be the Leon Jaworskis. You can use what you have received here. You can use those skills, those aptitudes, that passion that you have to be a Davidic leader like Leon Jaworski was. Leon Jaworski's children, they're now in their later senior years. His 3 children are all very involved in Baylor Law School in terms of their interest and their philanthropy. And in particular, they are prideful of Baylor Law School because of their dad, but also because of their understanding of what leadership is all about and how you have, if not unique, highly distinctive opportunities in the decades ahead to be Davidic leaders. With that, the time has arrived for the conferral of the degrees. Will the degree candidates please stand? Each of you has completed the requirements for the degree of Juris Doctor as prescribed by the Baylor University Board of Regents and the faculty of the School of Law. Accordingly, on behalf of the Board of Regents and President Linda A. Livingstone, it is my delight, my pleasure, and my honor to confer upon you the degree of Juris Doctor. We will now go forward to the award of the diplomas and the hooding of each of our graduates. We are in a beautiful sanctuary, and we, of course, must act accordingly, but at Baylor Law School, we have a long tradition. And that tradition is that as each graduate, your graduate, comes across the stage, your graduate, we invite the family and friends and loved ones of that graduate to make as much noise as you possibly can. If you are reticent to do so because of the surroundings, remember this: we measure the depth of your love for your graduate by the decibels that you can produce.
Ransom M. Abraham. Scott Zachary Bray. Cameron Rocio Castro. Gregory Bradford Cox. Haley Ann Cutler. Erika J. Griffith, highest ranking student in the graduation class. Nicolette Page Lot Speech. The next student has completed our special distinction in litigation as noted and described in your program. William Edward Mcmichael. Mary Kate Bartlett Moore. Megan Lee Pepper. Nathaniel Thomas Rutherford. Chandler Marie Shirley. Caroline Wright.
Wow. Y'all are really good. You all get like an A++. Way to go, families. Let's all congratulate them again. Class, the 18th century Anglican cleric John Wesley said, "Do all the good you can in all the places you can, by all the means you can, by all the ways you can, to all the people you can, for as long as you can." And I think that's a good message for you to carry forth from this sanctuary. We have had a wonderful occasion here, an occasion of memory. I want to thank our Registrar Jerry Cunningham, our Associate Dean Leah Teague, Susie Casberg, Meredith Meyer, and Emily McCullough for their work in making the ceremony possible and so smooth. Thank you so much, each of you. And also Mr. Hank Carrillo for his beautiful organ, prelude, and processional music. We will all now go celebrate at the Sheila and Walter Humphrey Law Center down the way, U Parks, and we have encouraged our graduates to take their loved ones and family through the Law Center so you can see where they have done their work the past 3 years. We will now adjourn here to the Law Center. The stage party and the class will have a recessional here, but please remain seated because we're going to go to the narthex, but then we are going to come back in to the side entry here, and we will have class photos right here at the lectern. And with that, God bless, and we are adjourned.